and welcome to the Washington Farm Bureau Update, a podcast designed to provide the latest agriculture, legislative, and Farm Bureau information. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ben Tyndall. It's always great to kick off our podcast with a win for agriculture. And this past week, we were able to celebrate not only one, but two wins at the federal level. The United States and China signed a Phase 1 trade agreement to increase the purchase of American agriculture products. U.S. officials say over the next 2 years, China could potentially purchase up to $50 billion worth of agriculture products annually. In the midst of celebrating Phase 1 of the China agreement, we received the second round of good news with the Senate's approval of the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. This agreement is expected to increase our agricultural exports by $2 billion. We would like to thank all of you for responding to our tireless efforts to press for passage of USMCA. From our postcard campaign to our online action alerts and social media advocacy, your efforts made a difference. Now, bringing things a little closer to home on the state level, the first week of the 2020 legislative session saw lawmakers hitting the ground running. Now that we're in the middle of the second week, with only about a week and a half before the first committee cutoff, I'm joined by Tom Davis and Bree Elsey, our government relations team, to get their feedback on what we should be aware of. Bree, let me start with you. What are you really keeping an eye on this week?
There's a really important bill that I want to highlight for our members today, and that is Senate Bill 6261. The bill sponsor is Senator McCoy, and you'll remember him as the sponsor of the H-2A bill from last year.
So how will this bill impact our members?
If you have an employee that issues a complaint, and this doesn't have to be a complaint in writing, doesn't have to be sent to an employer or HR or L&I, but if they make a complaint in any capacity, you have to rehire them for the next season. The presumption will now be that if you don't rehire them, you're retaliating because of their complaint. The presumption will no longer be that as an employer, you had a valid reason for not rehiring that employee. The result will be an increase in complaints as well as an increase in litigation.
Okay, so what are the next steps that we should be watching for?
If this bill passes out of the Senate, I'll be putting out an action alert to get as many Farm Bureau members as possible to testify against this really bad bill in the House.
All right, Tom, let me turn it over to you now. What are you hearing? What should we be tracking?
You know, there's a lot of talk about there being one Washington. And one of our concerns as we look at some of the bills that have been introduced this session is really questioning the validity of that statement from some of the bill sponsors, because there have been a lot of bills that are kind of anti-rural Washington. And I'll share a few of those with you in a minute. But what I'd like to talk to you about is a few positive bills that we frankly haven't had much opportunity to share with. But even just this week, there's a House Bill 2498 by Representative Corey out of Yakima that deals with DNR, Department of Natural Resource leases for ag ground, both pasture and farm ground. And this bill would compensate farmers and ranchers for any lost revenue they would experience if and when DNR comes in and does an early termination of their lease. This is not under current law, and so currently there have been cases where DNR has done an early termination of these ag leases, and the farmers and ranchers have actually lost their investment dollars that went into improving those lands for the term of the lease that they had planned on. So we see that as a very good thing. DNR supports it, we support it, and we think that's going to get out of committee. Another one is House Bill 2559 by Representatives Springer and Dent. This helps our rural counties with the what's called PILT payments. That's payment in lieu of taxes. It's property tax dollars from the state to the counties for those state lands that are located in the counties. And there are some counties like Okanagan, Kittitas, and Yakima that have been receiving thousands upon thousands of dollars less from the state than what they were truly owed. And this rectifies, it fixes that situation and locks it into statute from here on out. So hopefully the legislature would be less likely to come in and cut those dollars to those rural counties. And that was a problem that was created when the recession hit about a decade ago and the legislature was looking for dollars. And so they took that out of the pockets of some of these rural counties. Another one is Senator Warnock's bill, 6352, that steps in and says when the state is looking to site either a wind farm, a solar panel farm, any type of alternative energy location facility, you cannot go around the local government's involvement in that siting decision. We had a situation in the last year or so where that exactly happened, where the Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council, it's called FSEC, they did go around the county and make a siting decision. And frankly, that was a group of unelected bureaucrats that made a decision that didn't involve the county, and that's not right. And so this bill would change that if indeed it becomes law. Now, as far as the one Washington comment I made at the beginning, there are some urban legislators that have introduced legislation that would amend the Growth Management Act, and I'll call it from GMA from here on out, that would amend the GMA. One way they're looking at amending it was to include conditions for climate change that would require the counties to start planning on ways to mitigate for climate change. Now, that might just sound, nice on paper, but when you actually put it down on the ground, some of those conditions would include the counties having to mitigate for any aspects of climate change that might be occurring in their counties, reducing their greenhouse gas emissions, reducing the total miles of vehicles traveled in their county boundaries. So you can imagine yourself as a farmer, as a rancher, that you're being told you need to find ways to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. So maybe running your vehicles, your tractors less. And we'd like you to drive less miles from not only on your farm, but off your farm, bringing your products to market. And clearly that is a ridiculous request. And so we spoke against that, as a number of us did, and even the counties and cities in the hearing this week came out and spoke with concerns about the bill. So we're hoping that bill, there's versions in both the House and Senate, do not pass. And then one other one I'll share with you is it's another growth management bill that would, in the planning goals for the GMA, insert salmon recovery as one of those desired outcomes for GMA. Now, I think most of us would support some level of salmon recovery focus, but this would insert it actually into GMA. But more problematic is it introduces a new term, net ecological gain, into state law. And currently when you do a project on your land under permit, generally there's a no net loss requirement. So do no harm to the environment when you're doing a project. But what this new standard, net ecological gain, is, not only do you do no net loss, but in fact, you have to improve the environmental conditions located on the property that you're doing the project on. And it doesn't describe how much improvement has to be made. And unfortunately, it appears that would be in the mind of the state or county regulator that's standing on your property watching what you're doing. It's up to them to determine how much improvement needs to be made. And for any of you who have experience working with regulators, you know how unfortunate a situation that would be. And it would also provide opportunities for third parties to probably file lawsuits saying they don't think enough gain was made on that project. So this one, I think, is worse than the other, and we'll continue to watch for these. These bills are examples of why we need your help. When you see us send out an alert asking for your help, either to call or write or come to Olympia and testify, we really do mean it. There are some serious bills this year that we, as all of us as Farm Bureau members, need to come together and work together to help defeat bad legislation. So keep an eye out for not only updated podcasts, but our legislator each week that gives you the up-to-the-minute information that you need to help this state stay in the right direction.
Tom, Bree, thank you so much for that information and for keeping us posted. One of the big issue bills that committees were considering last week was SB 5412, which would in essence implement a low-carbon fuel standard. This bill was heard on Thursday in the Senate Environment, Energy, and Technology Committee. 3 Farm Bureau members, Kevin Dobbins from Clark County, Mike Clayton from Chelan County, and Taylor Peralt from Yakima County, came out to Olympia to speak on the bill and, in particular, the effects that ethanol products have on the equipment that farming families use and depend on. Here is some of their testimony.
Good morning, Chairman Carlisle and members of the committee. I'm opposed to Senate Bill 5412, mainly because of the increase in maintenance and parts it causes us. We're a family farm and I do all my own maintenance. This is so important that we pay about 40 cents extra per gallon to have non-ethanol fuel on the farm.
Ethanol products, as I was told, have a 3-month lifespan before they rot. That fuel coming to us is already a month old, meaning I keep it in my tanks and equipment about 2 months before it's garbage. From my experiences, it's been pretty corrosive to its fuel systems, eating the rubber, having to replace lines, that sort of thing.
Our farm runs a 100-gallon non-ethanol tank for the reason that it's better for all of our small engines. We went to the non-ethanol gas and noticed that our repairs have been cut in almost in half. Labor went down. We had better luck with the equipment throughout the summer running without having to fix. It's easier on the materials that are used in the carburetors. The lifespan is longer, and we've noticed that it has better fuel mileage. And when you go through over a couple hundred gallons in a month, it adds up real quick.
You talked about jobs. 15 years ago, we were about a 200-employee operation. And since then, from foreign producers, labor laws, wages, we're now a workforce of 3 people. We've had to change our crops and our whole process.
We are price takers, not price makers. So when our costs go up, we don't get to add 10 cents to the price of our apples to cover that. So the costs are already affecting the viability of our industry.
After the committee, I spoke with the men to hear their thoughts on how it went and the importance of speaking to their legislators. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming out to Olympia this morning to testify on Senate Bill 5412. I understand that this is your first time testifying before a legislative committee. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm seeing a bunch of heads nodding yes. So my question is, I understand Bree reached out to you, told you of the issue, invited you to come. Why did you agree? What made you say yes?
I figured if I'm going to complain about it, I might as well complain to people that can change it.
I'm in lead of all the repairs at our farm, and they're the ones that tell us that we're spending too much money or we need to save money on here, which doesn't help us out when everything's running full bore.
Can you talk to me a minute about the value of our legislators hearing directly from farmers and ag producers? What is it that you bring that perhaps others can't?
Well, it was surprising. They certainly were very welcoming of us in the committee room. You know, some guys in jeans and boots dressed like farmers. We felt a little bit out of place, but they seemed to be really interested in hearing from real people with real problems. So I thought it went really well.
You know, we're the ones that actually deal with these problems. We know exactly what we're talking about. We see the problems that are caused by this stuff, and we're the ones that are fixing it, not people that just know about it.
Bree, is there anything else that you would like to add regarding this morning or the value of legislators hearing from our members?
I'd say the gentleman did really great. My phone was blowing up with text messages about how fantastic this panel was. Several senators stepped out afterwards and talked to them as well. And you know they've made an impact when you see and hear things like that.
Kevin, Mike, Taylor, the Washington Farm Bureau appreciates you, and we want to encourage all of our members to speak out on the issues that are important to you and your family. Be it coming to testify before a legislative committee, writing a letter, sending an email, or making a phone call, these are all important ways for you to communicate with your lawmakers and know that your voice is important and needs to be heard. Well, that wraps us up for this week. The WFB Update is a production of the Washington Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture in Washington State, ensuring our family farms continue to feed the world. To learn more, visit our website at www.wsfb.com.